in the last iteration of this musical series, the host asked if you were working on something that you wanted to share. And this is for Christine and you both, Kay, but I realize you're still in the production of the documentary. So perhaps you could speak to us about that, and maybe Christine, what you're working on now, as a perhaps maybe that would be the time that we have, but if you could expand on that, that would be great.
Okay. Do you want to start first, Christine?
Yeah, so right now I'm working on poems again. So I always start out after I finish a collection, I think, okay, my next collection is going to be about XYZ, and the poems are going to fit together in this way. And I always have this grand plan, and it never works out that way. And I think I am still fighting, in a sense, that feeling of what is expected of me as a poet, what types of subject matter will get me published in the right places. Like, I always have that looming over me in some ways. But you know, I do have tenure now, which feels like a little bit of freedom. So
congratulations.
Thank you. So I do feel like that has freed me up to continue exploring what subject matter is actually really important to me, and figuring what forms are really correct for me. So I've been working on these poems, and I've been looking more and more at my mother's family. She immigrated from Korea when she was 16 years old. And I find that kind of an interesting repetition in my life. So my father was incarcerated at 16, and my mother immigrated to the US when she was 16. So that seems to be an important number, a moment of immense change for both of them, and thinking about how that impacted their lives, and how I still see that in my life today in my relationships with my family. So I'm exploring that. And I'm also working on more and more what I would call craft essays. They are not exactly scholarly essays, but essays that detail the stakes as a writer of color. Like, what does it mean to write from this particular space? What do aesthetics look like for writers who are not white? And I'm really interested in just trying to contribute to that conversation.
Great. Thanks, Christine. Looking forward to that. So I think what I've been doing is still working on this documentary, which actually is ended up beginning as a kind of a study of traveling to Japanese American incarceration sites, but really ended up more of a survey of being a Japanese American identity in America. So it kind of covers the immigration history, and then and incarceration, racism, and then consequent assimilation. There's a story in Chicago about how they're trying to it was the largest post-war resettlement community, so and then just how we can activate ourselves as Asian Americans to show solidarity to other marginalized communities, which is extremely important, to me. And so there's a tangential piece that I wrote for a symphony, which I actually premiered in Miami a couple of years ago, and recently in St. Louis Symphony and Seattle, I did this visual piece that's a 25-minute symphonic piece that covers the incarceration from removal to the incarceration. And I'm going to be performing that with Seattle Symphony in January, and then Virginia Symphony, and then hopefully a bunch of other symphonies in the future. And it actually contains the two songs that I sang today on guitar, so that's how they were written for this symphonic piece.
Oh,